Let's work on setting up a win message for our game. So my objective for the player is for them to collect parts for a boat, collect them together, and then come back to the boat, fix the boat, and then they can leave the island. So that's going to be their goal for the game. So what I've done is included a boat and a dock. And what we're going to do is when the player gets close to the boat, I'm going to set it so that when he touches a collider, it's going to trigger a win message, but only if he has the three objects selected. So to set this up, I'm going to grab my boat and I'm going to put on a collider in here. So I'm going to go to Physics, Capsule Collider. All right, I'm going to increase the radius. So this is going to be the radius in which he needs to get to trigger the win message. All right, so put it about there. And the reason I'm using a capsule is so I can increase the height and I then have a vertical wall instead of a sphere collider where I have the curved surface. So I like that vertical wall. It's just a personal preference. So now this basically creates a radius around the boat. So if the players collected all the objects, it's going to trigger something. Well, to trigger an event, we have to then change it from a solid capsule collider to a trigger. So what that does is, if I left it like this and I tried to take the player and run to the boat, he would actually hit an invisible wall because it's a solid collider. But as soon as I click the is trigger, now it actually triggers an event and he can run through it. All right, we just have to set up what that event is in code. That's what that's for. So I'm going to go ahead and check that. We got that set up. And now we'll go ahead and create some variables and get this working in code. So I brought up my player controller script. And we're going to go ahead and create a private reference to a text message. I'm just going to call win message, MSG for message. All right, and we're going to actually grab this from the scene in our start method. So I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to set win message to that game object that we're going to create here in just a minute. All right, I'm going to call it win message. So whatever you put in here needs to be the name of the object. Dot get component. We're going to get the text property of that object. All right, so I'll save that, come back into Unity. Okay, it's going to give a warning right now because we're not actually doing anything with it, but we'll get that set up in a minute. So go ahead and find your canvas. Again, this is all the text that's going to display in the game view right up here. I'm going to go ahead, so I'm going to duplicate that and use that. Change the name, and again, needs to be exactly the same as what we've typed in our script right here. And I'm going to change the anchor point. So I'm going to click here, hold down Shift and Alt, click in the middle, and that'll change the anchor point to be right in the middle. All right, to make the text align to the middle, we need to use these two paragraph alignment buttons. So center, left and right, center, up and down. And then I'm just going to change the text to you win. You can personalize your text message to whatever you want. I'm going to increase the font size and change it to bold. And that means I'll need to change the height to match that. So that's what my win message is going to look like. We can leave it like that because we're going to change the text right off the bat in the start menu. So if I go back to my script right here in start, now that I have this object referenced, I can just grab it with win message and I don't have to go through all this again of grabbing the object and then the component. So I'm just going to set the text property to nothing. Just a set of quotation marks, that means it's empty. All right, so right off the bat, that text is going to go away, and the player is going to be able to play the game. There we go. Okay, good as new. All right, when we actually go to build this, we're going to take away the slider as well, so that'll be out of the picture as well. Now we need to account for all the objects being collected. So let's create another private variable, and this one's going to be an integer, meaning a whole number, and I'll just call it items collected. And we'll set it to 0 at first. Okay, it's always good to reset it in the start method as well. So we'll reset it there. Eventually, we're going to actually allow the player to restart the game, so this is important too. So when the scene is restarted, they can reset all these values. So when an object is collected, I'm going to find my onCollision enter, and I'm just going to increase items collected by 1. There's a few ways you can do this. You can set it equal to items collected plus 1, and then I'll add 1 to whatever it is. But the shorthand using C# is just plus plus. This automatically adds 1 to items collected. All right, I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in each one of these statements here, so it'll increase the value of that. So now we're going to check to see if our items collected is 3, and that'll trigger a win event. But we want it to happen when we hit the collider of the boat. So the name of this object is important. Okay, you can use a different object, you can use a different objective, but I'm just showing you how it works with my game. All right, so we need a new method for this. Instead of on collision enter, we want on trigger enter, because it's going to trigger an event. This requires a collider that we'll call call. Very similar to the collision here. Oops, forgot my void. There we go. All right, so if the collider that the object touches, or that the player touches, is named boat. Okay, capitalization does matter here. And the items that they have collected is equal to 3. So this is important to actually trigger the win. If you left this part out, they could win the game just by running up to the boat. All right, we'll set our win message so they know they have won, and we'll say you win. Okay, so I haven't spread my object around just for testing purposes. So there's the first object, battery collected, transmission collected, propeller collected. Now I was so close to my boat that it automatically triggered the win event, but obviously you'd want to put the last one so it was a little further away so they'd have to run. All right, so it triggers a win, and they can still move the character around. To set up the restart of the scene only takes a couple lines of code. Okay, we need our update function for this, so we're going to constantly check to see if we have a win. So we're going to see if win message dot text is equal to, and now we need to type in the exact same message that we had for the win. So that would be right here. If you want to copy and paste, it'd probably be a little quicker. And we need to check for a button press or a key press. So I'm going to check for the spacebar key. So keycode.space. Okay, so if the win message is you win and the player is pressing the space key, then we'll take the entire application and we'll load the level. What we're actually going to do is reload the level. So when we go into build settings here, we'll talk about this soon, but the different levels that you have in your game are always numbered by an index, and the very first one is 0. So since we only have one scene that we're working with in our game, it's scene 0 or level 0. Okay, a couple other tidying things we need to do is to go ahead and get rid of the slider so the player can no longer change the passage of time. Make sure you save both of these scripts. We'll come back into Unity, make sure we don't have any errors. And then you'll just want to debug from here. Okay, test it one last time, make sure we're all working. Again, I think I'll run from the other side and make sure it doesn't trigger a win right away. There we go. So I got all 3 collected. You'd run from one part of the map, come close to the boat, and they win the game. All right, if I hit spacebar, goes ahead and resets the scene. And we're good to go. Looks like it's getting dark. In the next tutorial, we'll go ahead and focus on building it, getting it set up, and actually installing it, and then putting it into your Google Drive so you can share it with other people.